Okay, it's 5:30. We are going to begin the Thursday, June 12th meeting of the Iowa City Historic Preservation Commission, beginning with roll call.
Brown, present.
Villanueva.
Margaret Beck. Thoman.
Sellergren.
Kevin Burford.
Lou Reynolds.
All right. Public discussion of anything that's not on the agenda. Great. Certificates of appropriateness for 416 Reno Street.
Thank you. Members of the Commission, Ann Russett, Neighborhood and Development Services. One second here. Ryan Russell just joined us for the minute taker. Okay, thank you. This first item is related to 416 Reno Street, which is a local historic landmark. This map here shows the location of the property in between Fairchild Street and Davenport Street. Here are a few photographs of the house. The house was built in 1898 as a two-story Queen Anne with free classic detailing and patterned masonry. The house has a main hipped roof with projecting gables to the two sides, north and south, with the similar gambled wall dormer on the front facade. The house is brick with a stone foundation, and there's a full front porch which has slender classical columns on stone piers. Here's just a few more photographs of the house. This is the west and south facades. And the east and south. And then one more showing the east and north facades. And then one more photograph showing an aerial of the property. The request tonight is for the Commission to approve a new garage at this location. Before we get into the details of the project, I wanted to provide a little bit of background. In August of 2023, the owner did apply for a building permit for the garage, and the permit was issued prior to the historic review being approved. A year later, in August of 2024, an application was submitted for historic review for the garage. At that time, the application was incomplete because staff did not have drawings for what the garage would look like, elevations, so we notified the applicant of that. In September, the applicant provided drawings, but what was provided did not reflect what was on the ground and built. So staff requested photos or drawings of what was built. In April of 2025, the owner reached out to staff and noted that historic approval for the garage was still needed. And we again explained that the application was incomplete and that we needed a little bit more information. And on May 7th of this year, the owner did provide that material and the application was complete. That's why the application is before your Commission tonight. One last detail, the property was sold last week, so there is now a new owner. I think the previous owner and the new owner are both present tonight. So again, the project is the construction of a new front gabled two-car garage with two single-car overhead doors, lap siding and shingle siding in the gable, and a passage door to the south. The siding is LP SmartSide, and the door is a fiberglass door. The overhead doors are carriage house doors with composite overlay and a band of windows at the top. And this is just a photograph of the northern facade of the building, and just noting that the trim and the siding has a fake wood grain. And here's the southern facade with the passage door shown. And then this is the rear, the eastern facade of the garage. So in terms of the guidelines, there are several that apply here. I'm just going to touch on a few. There's recommendations related to doors and siding. Doors talk about adding trim to a garage door, openings, installing two single car doors instead of one single double garage door, which the new garage does have 2 single car doors. Substituting a material in place of wood siding only if the substitute material retains the appearance and function of wood. In terms of site and landscaping guidelines, the guidelines do recommend that the parking be provided behind the primary structure, which in this case it does. There's no alley access here, so the access is from Reno Street. In terms of windows on outbuildings should be relatively small and rectangular or square. And the guidelines related to wood note that fiber cement board is an approvable substitute, but that there should be no simulated wood grain. For new outbuildings, the guidelines recommend placing new outbuildings, including garages, to the rear of the primary building, which is the case in this garage, and reflecting the style of the primary structure. The guidelines note that carriage-style doors are appropriate for some properties. Again, installing a single-car garage door and incorporating windows in outbuildings. So with the garage, there are some things that comply. There are also things that don't comply with the guidelines. So I'm just going to go over some of the things that don't directly align with the guidelines in the handbook. First, garages should reflect the style of the primary structure. The gable roof is acceptable here. However, the slope doesn't reflect that of the house. It's much lower. And it appears that there is shingle siding in the front gable end of the garage, but nothing like that exists on the house. The siding is LP SmartSide siding with a fake wood grain texture, and LP Smart siding is an acceptable material to use, but it should be smooth because historic lap siding never had an unfinished texture. Doors should be wood or fiberglass, which it is in this case. Typically, they would have a half light or a 2-panel door with a half light and be trimmed to match the historic trim. New outbuildings should have windows, and this garage has no windows. And again, like the siding, the trim also has a fake wood grain. But I just wanted to note that the location of the garage, its size, and the overhead doors all comply with the guidelines. The commission does have the ability to approve projects that don't directly align with the guidelines through an exception if the intent of the guidelines are met. And staff is recommending approval of this certificate of appropriateness at 416 Reno Street as presented in the staff report through an exception to the guidelines for the new garage. Although there are aspects of the projects that do not meet the guidelines, the intent of the guidelines is met. The garage does not substantially alter or destroy the defining architectural character of the site or neighborhood because the location of the garage, its general size, and the overhead doors all comply with the guidelines. And that concludes my presentation. I'll turn it back to the chair.
All right. Clarifying questions from the commission?
Was this replacing like an old garage that was there that was torn down, or
There was
it-
no garage on the
nothing
site,
there?
and I
Okay.
think there's no evidence that there was ever a garage.
Okay, so this is just a brand new structure. Okay.
Burford, is the paint scheme the same as the house? The color?
You can look at the, so it looks like it's the same as the trim. You can kind of see that in this photograph here.
Thank you.
Is that a siding on the house in addition? We're assuming. I'm just curious.
Yeah, Jessica can probably speak to that.
Yeah, in 1975, they made that gabled wall
Okay.
dormer on the back.
Okay.
Public comment will be after applicant comment.
The only other clarifying question I had, so when, and I realize that we're talking about essentially ancient history at this point, but when the application was submitted for the garage and it got the building permit, Was that a mistake on the city's part to issue the building permit before historic review had been completed?
Yes, that was a mistake.
Do we know if there was any discussion during that permit process? Was there any discussion about this needing to go to historic preservation?
There were conversations prior to the submittal of the building permit regarding, the fact that it was a local historic landmark and historic review would be required for exterior work.
Okay. And I'm assuming, too, the house has probably had projects done to it, and I'm assuming it maybe came through historic preservation, projects done to the house? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any more clarifying questions? Applicant comment? If the applicant would like to comment, you're good? Okay, then it's time for public comment. If you could sign in, please. Oh, you are the applicant? Yes. Okay, so you're not the applicant. Are you so you're the public?
She's the new owner.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a bit confused on that. So this is no,
Yeah, anyone who speaks, speak into the microphone and sign in.
this is the applicant during the process, there's not a new. Sure. We're looking back at former
This is
owner.
the applicant who applied for the historic review.
Yeah.
Just take a look at
Thanks.
those, so it shows you why we got a little confusion here, which I'll address.
Gotcha. Thank you. I understand, I think.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Julie Arling, and previous owner of the house, and the garage was our first project. We quickly learned it's very overwhelming, being under both local and national domain, and so we thought we were doing what was right. When we first bought the house, we met with Jessica to kind of go over the process, and she was very gracious and kind of spelled things out. It was just rather confusing at first, and we thought we were doing the right thing. We had no ill intent whatsoever. We've done a lot of wonderful things in the 2.5 years that we've been there. As you can see, the shrubbery was really overgrown. Some of the pictures don't show the patio was caving in. The porches were rotting. We invested a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and money in this, and so there was no ill intent at all. The one thing I'll point out is there is shingles in the back at the gable, kind of scalloped. So that was one thing we asked, and to be honest, I don't remember if I asked Claire in in Virginia or Jessica about we wanted to emulate that, and we were told not to try to, I forget what the wording is, not to try to emulate it too close, but to historically match it. So we were dissuaded from using the same shingles, scalloping. So that's kind of where we stand. The siding is all wood. The trim is wood. I think there was reference that it was not wood, that it was metal. We don't have any metal on it. So, yeah.
So, little background, I've been doing construction now.
Can you
for
sign
many
in
years.
too and state your name, please?
I'm sorry, my name is Bob Hardy, co-owner with Julie on the home. Anyways, so as Julie mentioned, the house had been abandoned for about 2.5 years. It was infested with squirrels. The 2 porches were rotted out. There was no garage. The back porch was falling in, or the back patio was falling in. So we had Amish guys come in, replace both porches, the south porch, the front porch, exactly to historical standards. On the garage, Jessica had mentioned that she had told me 5, 10, 15, 20 times to apply. I met with Jessica 5, 6, 7 times. So I thought we were in total compliance. At no point in time did I have any idea that I really needed to apply for historical review, because I had been in her office multiple times going over all the things that need to be done, lap siding, this type of shingles, these type of doors. What I handed out to you, ladies and gentlemen, are the doors that we bought installed, and I shop around, believe me. Those were $7,200 doors installed. And you can see the wood grain finish on them. So Jessica had mentioned we needed lap siding, so I went to Menards and picked out the lap siding that I thought really matched the wood grain on the doors. Some comments were like, wow, it matches perfectly, it's really great. So when we talked to Jessica about the porch, we actually initiated a call to her about additional stuff being done on the porch by these Amish guys, and she had mentioned there's a couple open items on the garage, and we thought there was a couple minor open items on the garage. We had no idea. So there was, as Julie mentioned, there was no intent whatsoever to go around historical standards at all. The shingles on the roof of the garage match the shingles on the house. The siding is actual engineered wood siding, and as Julie mentioned, there's no metal on the structure at all. The garage is all wood, all the trim is wood. The garage door and the wooden door are all in compliance. So, we took a home that was kind of fallen down, been abandoned for 2.5 years, and turned into kind of a show place, and we've got this wonderful lady who purchased it. And, we were great stewards. We took great care of it. It looks enormously better than it did 2.5 years ago. So we're hoping the board will kind of understand, there was no intent here. If we would have known it was supposed to be smooth siding, we would have put smooth siding on it. So anyways, I thank you for your time and your consideration. Oh, let me sign in here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So it is wood siding?
It's like a manufactured wood
Gotcha.
siding.
Okay.
Oh, they have the
Oh, that's, okay. That's back.
other page of that.
Got it.
And in this process, do we hear from the new owner?
Anyone can speak, or
Okay.
you can ask questions if you need to.
Okay.
If you want to speak, I didn't know if you wanted to or not. I do. Okay. But yeah, just sign in.
I can't speak and write at the same time, so.
No pressure.
Okay, hi. I'm Miranda Johnson. My husband and I are the new owners of Reno Street. I just wanted to speak because we closed on the home on June 6th, which was last Friday. And on June 6th is when we heard about the situation for the first time. So we were not aware of any pending items. We were aware of it being a historical landmark, and the process and all of that was explained very well. And we met with the national person, Claire, and I've since now talked to Anne. I don't know if I don't know what your name is. Is that you?
Yeah.
Okay. You're the only one without a name tag, so I wasn't sure. So, yeah, you were very helpful, sent over resources. I understand the process now, but I'm feeling very anxious because I kind of came into this situation blind, and I feel a little deceived. And I don't know if that was intentional or not. Not really the point, but reality is we're the new owners. We're excited to take care of the home and do things in the right way and bring things to you first. I'm just hoping that we don't have to redo work on this garage as the new owners, because we were not aware of any of the issues. So, yeah. And when we did get communication on the garage on June 6th, it was through realtors. So I've never spoken directly with them. Of course, that's how it works. And our realtor relayed what their realtor said, and what was communicated to us was that worst case scenario, there was this meeting today, and worst case scenario was that bushes would have to be put in to cover something.
That's what I was going to suggest.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but then I had already signed up for the newsletter, or not the newsletter, the email trigger to get the agenda. And so then I was like, okay, I'm going to go read that and verify what's going on. And so I read through the agenda, and then that's when the anxiety came in, because I was like, that is not what was told to us. And this has been going on since 2023. And so I just wanted to kind of let you know where I stand. And yeah, That's it. That's all I have to say. And hi.
This is a side question, and I realize it maybe doesn't really relate to what we're doing here tonight, but I thought when I saw this house for sale, and I did look at the description because I jogged by here, it's a beautiful house. Was there a component of needing to have public events at this house?
Yeah, they told us about that there was like once a year you had to do some sort of, you could do like an open house, or there's like different options you could do, but make it open to the public for a couple of hours. I don't know like all the specifics, but I do recall them telling me about that.
Okay, so I'm going to
process.
kind of keep that in mind too, that this is a space that's not only a home, but is from time to time kind of open to the public, it sounds like.
Yeah, the way it was described to me is it can be as informal or formal as you want as the owner, and it can be like an open house or, I don't know, that was the only suggestion they gave me that I remember, so I had never heard of that,
Yeah.
so.
Garage sale.
Yeah. So.
Go ahead. She was going to mention something. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm done unless you have questions. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yes, we didn't find out about all of this until the very end either. So we were hoping it was going to be resolved prior to close. And so when this meeting was a week later, that's where we found out that it was not going to be resolved. In talking to Claire Jones with National, yes, she had suggested mitigating it with some plantings, she said, on the street facing, which is confusing to me because it's cement. So I thought, well, the part that's the siding that is exposed is the north side. So I had suggested, the realtor had asked me to write up a note to the new owners, and I said, from my understanding, that would be the north side, and it would probably equate to approximately 4 shrubs or some type of plantings, and we would assume responsibility for that. And then as far as the open house, yes, that is one of the stipulations, and it's one of the wonderful things. Being Carl Klaus's house at one time, the founder of the Nonfiction Writers Workshop here at the university, it was our intent to have that open house or to invite writers for, say, a dinner or something, and then to celebrate and for them to see his office and his workshop up on the attic level. The house really needed a lot of work, and so we were not at the point of opening it up to the public yet. I had taken down 3 rooms of wallpaper, there was another room, the living room and the stairway going up to take down, and then the master bedroom. So it was all,
The 2 porches were rotted out.
well, right, and it wasn't safe for people to come up because it was, we had to block off the stairs at one point because of the rotting wood. So
that stipulation was something that was in place when you bought the house, too? Okay.
So
Fascinating.
maybe we can just clarify this for the commission. This site is a National Trust site. So it's also a local historic landmark. So there's the local regulations that the commission obviously enforces. And then they are also working with a woman, Claire, at the National Trust because they also have to review these projects, but they're 2 separate processes.
yeah, so therein lies the challenge. But, it's a learning curve. And like I said, the garage was our first project, so.
Would the National Trust also normally review a new garage build?
Yes.
Okay. And did that happen, do we know? Sorry,
She's-
do we know if that happened?
She
No.
comes out once a year to
No,
visit.
it didn't happen, okay.
She visits the house once a year. It's my understanding Iowa City is the outside of the house, and Claire and National, they oversee the outside of the house and the inside, minus the bathrooms, the kitchen, and the bedrooms upstairs. So so we are under that, or we were, but the house is.
Thank you for clarifying that, Ann. I was wondering about that bit, too.
We should probably read a motion and then discuss
Yeah,
among the
unless you have
commission.
more questions for anybody.
Does anybody have more questions?
I'm just curious, new owner, do you like the garage?
Yeah, I think it looks
Okay.
nice.
I don't know.
With it. I just, I want to follow the rules, but I just didn't have a choice in the matter, so I'm hoping that I don't get penalized.
You
as
won't.
the new owner, so.
We sent you the letter. We'll be responsible.
All right. Would somebody like to read a motion?
I didn't get a letter, by the way. I didn't get a letter. I just got an email from the realtor.
Oh, yeah, that's all.
I should have brought champagne.
It's your last meeting.
You can't have booze in city office.
No. Okay, so Thoman moves to approve a certificate of appropriateness for the project at 416 Reno Street as presented in the staff report through an exception to the guidelines for a new garage proposal that meets the intent of the guidelines. Although there are aspects of the project that do not meet the guidelines, the intent of the guidelines is met. The garage does not substantially alter or destroy the defining architectural character of the site or neighborhood because the location of the garage, its general size, and the overhead doors all comply with the guidelines.
Villanueva seconds.
Burford seconds.
Commission discussion?
Burford, a garage in a 1898 house is kind of an anomaly in the first place, since a car would be a pretty exotic thing at that time. The construction and design of the garage was well-intentioned and in the understood spirit of historic construction. And in the words of Lady Macbeth, what's done cannot be undone. That's not always true, but I would speak in favor of the exemption.
I wanted to, there's a slide that shows a gazebo behind the garage. I'm curious about how old the gazebo is.
It's modern.
It's modern, okay.
It's like the 80s, right?
The gazebo's 30 years old, and John at Ace Hardware on Dodge Street built it.
Okay, good to know.
Wow.
All right.
The life of Carl is who designed it. Correct. I read a lot of history. Yes, it's really cool.
What a way to learn.
Reynolds, I would agree with what Kevin said. There were no garages, there was nothing there to begin with. It's, like you said, behind the house. It complies in spirit. I think at this point, yes, we move on.
And this is Thoman, I agree. There are good intentions there. The wood grain does bother me, but, I mean, it's so far from the sidewalk. I experienced this neighborhood walking, jogging. I see there's kind of a sheen there, but I, don't think I really noticed that wood grain from the sidewalk. The windows does kind of bother me too. You do see historic structures with quite a few windows. But I guess that was the reason I was asking about this public aspect of the house. And I know there was a mention of maybe wanting to keep some privacy within the garage. And, taking those windows out does give you more privacy. So I'm kind of throwing that out too. I guess I would be inclined to say that it's what's here and we move on.
I feel like in general, there's a lot of process frustration with this one.
Yes.
Right, in that the city approved something they should not have approved. And I'm assuming that that's not supposed to happen, and I'm assuming that the city knows that. Separate from that, I often understand that part of our conversation here is about precedent and what precedent we're setting. And what always gets me on things like this is the precedent is if you ignore conversations long enough, do it and just talk about it after the fact, then in the end, it's going to be okay because it's built. And I don't like that at all. I don't like the precedent that it sets. I don't know what we do about that because I don't know that there's much we can do. Other than get into a mess of a situation, right, which is not necessarily ours to get into.
There's different degrees of tolerance, I think, when it comes to like setting and breaking precedent. And I think in the case of an outstanding structure that doesn't actually change the historic structure, it's
Right,
You know?
but what I wonder then, can future applicants then come and say, well, look, in the end, you approved this with this carve-out, and so if I define the carve-out then the way that is convenient for me, can we also approve what I want? And do we find ourselves with our hands tied and it's harder for us to say no to future exceptions? Is that,
I mean, I
would that
think
be the
if
situation?
mistakes are made in the permitting process and they have a track record of continuing to interact with historic
Yep.
preservation the way those former owners have,
Sure.
then I suppose they can ask for an exemption on those grounds. But this does seem to be a somewhat unusual case.
But I also would say they were told many, many, many times to apply and they didn't. Right? And so according to what you guys said, you said that yourself. So
No,
I,
time out. Let's clarify something.
This is commission discussion. The public discussion is over.
so I will vote for yes for this because it's what the staff want and they see it. And I agree with all of you, but I also think that you're right?
Right.
Like, and my house is in one of the same situations.
Yeah.
So like, I totally get it. So,
And we've seen other projects come before us where someone, right, whether they have a track record of doing good things or not doing good things, to some extent, the decision that we're supposed to look at is not based on that, because then if I'm a really good person and I take really good care of a house for a long time, then I can do something I'm not supposed to and say, well, in the end, and not to say that this is what the applicants were thinking, right? But in the end, that just becomes okay, right? And like I said, I will end up voting in favor of this because it's a complete disaster of a situation that I don't know that we necessarily want to get in the middle of. And all of my sympathy can be felt for the new owner who purchased this home and then said, holy cow, what is this, right? And that's terrible. But it's a frustrating situation that I feel like there is culpability for the city for having approved the thing in the first place, right? And then, yes, whether we know it or not, like I own a historic home, mine is not on anyone's local landmark, anyone's national register of anything, right, National Trust. And I know if I do something on the outside, I have to get it approved, right? Even if I just have to say, hey, am I okay to do this? And Jessica says, yep, you're good, right? But, so anyways, it's just expressing the frustration that I'm sure is throughout the whole process.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments, Carl. And they are sitting heavy with me. I'm feeling frustrated from many different perspectives. And yeah, it is. It's hard to know that the city maybe didn't talk about this during the permit process. That's tough.
Do we have a motion? I'm sorry, do we have are we ready to vote on the motion?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Enjoy your house.
You know you're part of a historic district now.
All right, 514 Oakland Avenue.
Okay, I have this one too. Give me 1 second to get these slides up. Okay. So this is in the Longfellow Historic District. Here's a map of the district, and the star shows the location of the property. This is a Dutch colonial revival home, which was constructed around 1914. It's a 1.5-story home with a gambrel roof. The open porches have been enclosed in the front, and aluminum siding was installed in the 1980s. So here's the front of the home, and here's the rear of the home, which is what we're going to be discussing tonight, particularly this window here. The owner is requesting to alter this window here and install doors to access a new deck. The deck has been approved by staff already. So the purpose of this meeting is to look at the alteration to the window in the rear. So the guidelines that we used for this review relate to doors and windows. One is that new door openings that should be trimmed to match other doors. Substituting material in place of wood for doors is allowed if it's approved by the Historic Preservation Commission. In this case, they are requesting fiberglass, which the commission has approved in the past. In terms of windows, if an opening of a window is to be relocated, it should not detract from the overall window pattern. And in staff's review, the proposed alteration to the rear of the home does meet the guidelines. The proposed door is a full light fiberglass door. It'll retain the head height and width of the existing windows, and the change to the rear of the house will have minimal impacts on the historic character. And, you know, this alteration is an acceptable alteration because it's not visible from the street, and it will allow access to the deck from the inside of the home and creates a more usable outdoor living space for the owners. So staff does recommend approval of a certificate of appropriateness for the project at 514 Oakland as presented in the application. And I'll turn it back to the chair.
All right, clarifying questions from the commission? Applicant comment?
Give me a second, I'm Hull.
Sure. Just sign in. State your name, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Noah Johnson. And the only thing that I would add, everything sounded exactly as I understood it. The only thing I would add is that currently to reach the backyard, one has to exit out the side door, go down some steps, open a gate to get in. The fence does not enclose the backyard, so this was also a way to make it so that we would have a direct way to let our dog in and out. And what got me to think about that was one time this winter, actually it was fall, when I did slip on some ice. I didn't go down, but it was enough that made me go, oh yeah, letting the dog out, something like that. So for us, it's a matter of convenience also to some degree, a matter of just to make it a little safer, a little easier to do that. Otherwise, that's really the only thing that I would add, unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Would somebody like to make a motion?
Brown recommends approval of a certificate of appropriateness for the project of 514 Oakland Avenue as presented in the application.
Be in a wave of seconds.
All right, commission discussion? Great.
I prefer to. It sounds like a pragmatic, functional use and quite reasonable.
And it's the back of the house.
Yep.
It also the back of the house looks like it needs a door to me. I like the idea of a door.
And as a fellow dog owner, I understand.
And as someone that also has a porch that gets really slippery in the winter, I understand.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. Moving on to item E, Section 106 review, Highway 6 Bridge at the Iowa River. Thank you.
Here, you just take that.
And let me share the screen quick.
Oh, you weren't sharing?
No, I am sharing, sorry.
Oh, okay. And how do I point? Is this it?
Yeah.
And is it that one? Okay, great.
I have a lot of frustration with that first.
I guess I can't do that. Okay, so what we're going to talk about right now is the Section 106 project, and we're mostly talking about it to let you guys know about the process and to also initiate conversation about this particular process. So we have the Highway 6 bridge over the Iowa River, which is located here, and as part of a historic bridge study that I believe was in 2011, it was determined that this bridge, along with many others in the state, were eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. They do that with all types of structures. So we're not always talking about pretty buildings. You know, it could be a Quonset hut that's important, could be listed in the National Register. So keep that in mind. So we're talking about a bridge that was built, I believe, in 1958.
56, I think it is.
56, yes, you're right. Which one is that? And this is from the DOT's website. So basically what happens with Section 106 is when a federal agency has a project that will impact a structure that is historic, they go through a review process. And actually the first part of the process is, will my project have an impact on a structure? Yes. Then they determine whether or not that structure is historic, and through the definitions, it's either listed in the National Register or eligible. It doesn't have to be listed. If it is historic, then they go through a process to determine whether or not the project will have an adverse effect on that property. Basically meaning, will it impact the historic integrity of the property? So this is from the DOT's website, and they basically talk about it. Well, they say 58, but I don't know, 58 or 56, somewhere in there. They talk about the type of bridge that it is. They have this nice photo from the southeast side of the bridge, its length and everything, and they do say here that it's listed. So as they go through their process, the Federal Highway Administration has specific guidelines, and so they try to go through this process in order, evaluating this bridge and project based on these guidelines. So the first guideline is to do nothing. And so do nothing basically means that they would maybe repair the bridge in a way where they're not permanently changing anything. So it might be just temporary things. In this case, doing that kind of work would not solve the problem. The bridge needs repair, and so doing nothing is actually not an option. Some of the issues in regard to that are the fact that, you know, that it has a surface, it's been replaced in '79 and 2012. Each of those has reached the end of their life. The deck itself is thin and cracking. There's spalling on the surface and actually underneath, exposing metal that then rusts and deteriorates. And there's concerns about some girder cover plates, which I did not look up. And so, you know, I'm not going to talk about that in detail. But part of the issue is the fact that since the bridge has been in service for 68 years, some of those elements have also reached the end of their structural life. And of course, where the bridge meets the water and floating debris, there's been scouring, which basically kind of undercuts some of the piers and chips away at them. So the next option is build a new structure at a different location, bypassing the existing bridge. And so this would make the bridge into what, maybe a pedestrian bridge or something like that, so they would build another bridge. And here's the diagram they included, and the packet has their entire letter with their entire report, and so feel free to go through that. But they had issues with grade changes, with impacting culverts. We have, you know, this sidewalk that goes under here, that would be impacted. Some of these properties, oh, I am doing it on the right one. I'm sorry, I'm kind of excited about the IT capabilities here. But anyway, these properties here would be impacted if the bridge were to go on the north side of the existing one. And of course, we have a property here as well as the recreation parking here that would be impacted if the bridge was placed on the side. This part of the report also went through a lot of economical discussion about, maintaining that pedestrian bridge as well as constructing a new bridge and that process. And so basically, it was determined that it was not feasible to do that either. So then there's rehabilitation, repair, bringing it up to speed, making sure that it will last another 50 years. And in this case, we have, let's see, where does, so part of the issue with a rehab on a bridge is that nothing's going to be grandfathered in. There are sidewalk width requirements, there are width of approaches to the bridge, and things like this that would all have to be brought up to the new bridge design guidelines.
If
and
a rehabilitation took place?
If a rehabilitation took place. And one of the things, so they talk about the condition, this condition index, it's less than 50. I don't know what that guideline is, but it's less than.
Mm-hmm.
It's in only fair condition, it's more than 60 years old, and because it's part of the National Highway System, all of these things are negatives for its condition. The bearing piles, some of them are creosote-coated wood because that's what they used then. They have, this is again engineering speak, a 20-ton point bearing value where 90-ton is current. A rehab typically has a 20 to 30-year service life, and the rehab deck and everything would outlast the structure underneath, so that wouldn't be logical. And this goes back to this girders and the cover plates and the fact that that would be deteriorated. And then this one I thought was rather interesting. So in the way that the bridge was built, the interior beams, like under the middle of the span or the middle of the roadway, are bigger than the beams on the outside, like under the sidewalks. And that's probably because at the time, economics of structure, they just didn't need as much structure on the outside. But now we're talking about making a wider roadbed with a wider approach, with wider sidewalks. And those small beams would be considered undersized for the road that would then go over them. And they would have to put new outer beams that would be as big as the others. And so basically that would impact the historic character of the bridge. You would no longer see that structure. It would be covered and modified. And so it was their opinion that it is not possible to do a rehabilitation and maintain the historic integrity of the bridge either. And this was also interesting because they talked about how the width of the channel is also undermining some of the structure, and so they would like to actually make the bridge longer so it spanned further, so as the channel widened, it wouldn't be impacted. I just thought that was an interesting diagram. So basically what this means is that they have gone through this process, determined that yes, they're going to have an impact on a property. That bridge is historic and listed in the National Register. And because it's now going to be a demolition, it is definitely an adverse effect. I provided an opinion that yes, we concur, which is the language they use, with that opinion, and that the commission wants to be considered a consulting party because we are the certified local government in which the bridge exists. The State Historic Preservation Office is kind of the group that takes charge of this, and they are the ones who actually respond to the DOT, and they also agreed with all of this process and the eventual determination. So what that means is that, So what that means is that the DOT must mitigate for the loss of the historic structure. This happened once before in our community that I really know about, and that was after all of the flooding. There was kind of a chain reaction that resulted in the destruction of the Sabin School in the South District. And when that FEMA was involved with that as well, it was because of the School of Music and other things, basically playing chess with buildings, and so multiple uses and stuff. It resulted in that building needing to come down.
Wow.
And so we were mitigated by the loss of that building by having that entire neighborhood surveyed so that we could determine if there were other properties that were eligible for the National Register and stuff like that. We did come up with a small district that we started to try to get listed and then paused on that. So basically what ends up happening is the State Historic Preservation Office, the DOT, and anyone else involved in their side of the project will enter into a memorandum of agreement on how the DOT will mitigate the loss. We are considered a consulting party and will be signatories on that memorandum of agreement, and what the mitigation is part of our discussion, which is kind of exciting.
I can tell you're excited.
However, I have to say at this point, that's the extent of my experience. So I don't know, how do they come up with a scope? There's huge scope projects and small scope projects. How is the eventual dollar amount determined? I don't know some of these things. Mm-hmm. And generally, when a community has this coming up, you really look to your preservation plan. What are the things that you have as a goal for the community? Sometimes it might be your work plan, but your work plan is things that you're like imminently doing, hopefully. And so your preservation plan really talks about that in more detail. And so I do have some slides, and I put some in the packet, and we don't necessarily have to discuss this too much right now, but I'll look at it a little bit. What'll happen is we will have, we will need someone to be kind of the person on the commission who's involved. At this point, I'm assuming it'll be Andrew, but he is not back until July. So I would like, if anyone felt like they were interested, to be the alternate person, just in case Andrew cannot. We will eventually meet with the DOT and SHPO at the site, look at the bridge, we'll have conversations about it. And I don't know beyond that the extent of what that'll mean. Some of the things that could happen, okay, generally if it was like the Bortz house at 416 Reno, it's actually landmarked for the mason who built it, not Carl Klaus, but that's okay. If that house had to come down because of some federal project, maybe documentation of it and public education about it might be the thing. With a bridge, it's pretty well documented. It's not spectacular. I'm thinking that kind of misses the mark, as far as what we would want for a mitigation for a bridge like this. Sometimes there might be a survey of an adjacent area or related structures, but, it's not a historic area of town either. I mean, maybe for the period in which it was built, but most of it has been taken down and rebuilt since then in that area as well.
I can't think of anything.
No. Maybe a survey of a different area in town. There might be something like that could be possible.
The Kirkwood area, the Kirkwood Avenue area, maybe?
Maybe. I was thinking about that too, because we have that on the work plan. My concern with the Kirkwood Avenue neighborhood is that we have not even done a reconnaissance survey of that neighborhood. So right now it's gigantic. Mm-hmm. And, if we had gotten through that step and it was maybe, I don't know, an intensive survey of a specific neighborhood portion, then that might be really good. But I think that's one of the things that we'll talk to the state about. Maybe they'll think that is possible.
Yeah.
studies of similar resources. Well, the bridges have all been studied in 2011, and actually there's a current study going on right now for more modern bridges as well. So we don't need to be involved in that. I did think that, the airport's nearby. It had been studied at one point in time, but it was done so long ago, it's not even on the proper form. It's just in a letter. And so, maybe a study of our airport, which at one point was considered National Register eligible, it's at least transportation-based, even though it's not related to the DOT at all. But anyway, these are some of the things we could think about. Your preservation plan, it has goals. And it was updated in 2008. And, it's time to update it again. I don't know if updating our preservation plan is something that this project could help us with. That would be a good goal. The 10th goal has to do with neighborhoods. But I put up some slides, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but, identifying historic resources of our past is the first goal. And in our plan, there's objectives. And neighborhood strategies also has, objectives. And here's some of the neighborhoods that we know about. Now, I was just at the Preserve Iowa Summit last week, and Muscatine has done a really good job at keeping their preservation plan updated. And the way they have done their plan so that it can help guide them in things like this is they have come up with a list of what are the important topics or areas of research for their community. Like, one was fruit and vegetable sellers. I mean, really. There was different specific things that were part of the history of that city that they knew they wanted to investigate more over time. And so when a project like this comes up, or if an owner suggests something, or the commission suggests something, they figure out, does it fit within one of these categories? And then they start checking off those things that they want to do. So in general, I would also suggest that we all start gearing up for trying to figure out how to get a preservation plan update. I think that would help, especially since this one is from 2008, and there are a lot of goals in it that have been accomplished. But there are also a lot that either are not even in our trajectory anymore. There are things to update. So
What's Tanktown?
Tanktown is that area like where the, the hilltop is and stuff like that. That school that's nearby there on the.
Yep.
All of that's Tanktown.
I'm a proud Tanktown resident.
Are you?
Yes, I am.
I had no idea
nice.
that was the name. How did I miss that?
Oh, Jessica, I just want to throw my name out there. If you need a backup for Andrew, I would be glad to be that person.
Yeah, thanks, Margaret. But anyway, so that's the only thing I needed. However, I think that, if you guys have comments or thoughts, provide them. If you come up with them in the future, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to your chair. You could potentially reach out to Margaret. These are, we will be figuring out what the mitigation is over the coming months. I don't know how fast.
Relating to transportation, I know there was some talk a couple of years ago about doing some kind of plaque identifying where the railroad tracks were over in the Jefferson Street area. Something like that. I don't know. But that doesn't seem big enough.
No.
I'm curious about mitigation, and from hearing you talk, Jessica, so like surveys would be included in that, studies. Would they ever just give a city a lump sum of money and say, go spend it on something that's historic?
No, I mean, because part of it is that the agency gets it accomplished.
Okay.
And so if there's a survey, it goes to the agency who submits it to SHPO. Now, we would be reading it and reviewing it over time as the CLG and as one of the signatories. But yeah, it's not like a grant where we're going to go hire the people and set all of the terms. It's kind of, the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, is we trust them to have our best interests, and then we consult. But they want to do something that we need.
I was just thinking about projects.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the park along the railroad tracks, we've talked about. I think it's,
Oak Grove.
yeah.
Oak Park or something like that?
And the Hispanic historical significance of that. And then I was also thinking about Waterworks Park and the house that's been sitting there. I can't remember the name of that either. But it sounds like those things, yeah, okay. But it sounds like this is more intellectual work, maybe.
It's going to be a preservation consultant. Sometimes it involves, not only studying, doing maybe a survey or a nomination, depending on where you are, but it's often about public education too. So the agreements I've read through, usually there's some kind of output, and it might involve, slides or posters or something like that. I couldn't think of an example or actually off the top of my head, but yeah, it's for the community.
Montgomery Butler House it's adjacent and then it's on the same bike trail.
Mm-hmm.
Could be.
I think about that little house all the time.
It would be really cool if it was open to the public. It's in a good location to be.
Could be a little visitor center.
All right. Should we move on or?
Sure. It's totally up to you and what you guys, if you had any more comments or not.
Anybody want to add anything? Okay. F, report on certificates issued by chair and staff.
Okay, certificate of no material effect. This house at 604 Iowa Avenue is in the Conservation District, but it's also a local landmark. And behind the house, it's on a corner, and so this is the back of the garage. But anyway, the garage also enters off of here. There is a modern garage and a deck, and they're replacing the deck, the railing, there's some deteriorated trim. They will also repair a lot of this railing, which is also, not a historic railing. This had kind of a small porch, I think more similar probably to the Sangse Gilmore house on Market, kind of like that little tiny porch with columns and a little railing around it.
When is this railing from? And is it walkable? Can you go on it?
There's a whole door.
Yeah.
This house always fascinates me when I drive by it. Because the door that walks out onto that balcony is like a full front door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you get to know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head that much, but I can send you out more information if you'd like it. We do have a rather hilarious photo that I should have put in here, where it's a mom and her kid with a funny face in a Western outfit, and they're like kitty corner across the street, and the photo is of them, but you can see the house in the background. It's pretty hilarious.
The child looks miserable.
It's like, yeah, it's hilarious. Anyway, yeah, I can give you more information if you want it, though, because I do have more, just not right here, right now.
If you could circulate that other picture, that would be appreciated.
If you guys, if someone emails me, I promise,
Okay.
but I won't remember until Monday. This house is from the 50s, and it has an original brick porch floor. It's a glazed brick, the whole thing. That's not painted, it's glazed. Anyway, this is sagged. It's also pulling away from the house. We don't think there's sufficient structure under this porch floor, so it's being replaced, hopefully to match. That's how it was approved. 115 South Dubuque Street and 111 South Dubuque Street are kind of one property. 115 is, this is an older photo, it's painted white like this right now. It is our oldest commercial building in town. It's the 1856 Franklin printing house. And so it is National Register and local landmark, and then the building next to it is just a local landmark, connected anyway. It's getting quite an overhaul. There's some brickwork that needs to be done. This area is really interesting. It's just right here, and I think a car hit it, but the brick is cracked and pushed in, and all of that's going to be taken out and put back. Good masonry work. This is a historic brick. Kevin and I were talking about historic brick earlier.
Will that be preserved? That's preservable?
Yeah, and there are actually in this area, kind of like right on the alley, there are visible 3 different types of brick. And the mason has 2 of them. And the third one is a brick where it's obvious that the surface has been scoured like this. And he is going to make that with his grinder. And so he will make brick match if it doesn't already. But yeah, he will fix all of this. And there are some other cracks and deteriorated sections throughout. And there's a chimney on the side, and it needs to be, some of the bricks had been pointed poorly and spalled off, and they need to be replaced and stuff. This house is at 602 Rundell Street, and the windows will be repaired. This is just an example of one of the worst one. They tend to have some sill damage. Looks from the photos that most of the damage was from trim outside, but there's also some damage in the jamb and where the jamb and sill meet and stuff like that. For minor review, this is the other half of the project that we approved earlier. So the deck will be located here, and then they were also putting new shingles on the garage roof. This house at 1029 East Court Street, this is actually an interesting one to look at the historic photos of because it doesn't look anything like this. It's changed significantly through probably a 1930s remodel to make it look kind of colonial revival. But it had an interesting wraparound porch and stuff like that. Anyway, it's getting new shingles. So this is the approval for the shingles for the Reno Street house. We also have shingle replacement on 119 North Gilbert Street, which is in the Jefferson Street Historic District. We don't often see projects there that come up. And that's it.
Great. All right. Consideration of minutes for May 8th, 2025.
Bowman moves to approve the minutes for the May 8th, 2025 meeting.
Beck seconds. All in favor? Aye. Item C, commission discussion, outgoing Commissioner Farewell.
Yeah, so we have 2 commissioners leaving us, and we will miss them both. One of their positions is filled, and one of theirs is not. Christina, I want to say that you have always been the voice of reason.
Oh, thanks. Oh, thanks.
You know, I think you come into the commission and you say it bluntly and to the point, and it does tend to always be the opinion that does not have emotion involved.
Appreciated.
I think it's an
Thanks.
important point to have,
Thank
and
you.
you will be very missed.
Oh, thank you. That's
So
very
hopefully
nice.
in the future,
Maybe.
you can join us again.
Things get off the rails.
I know. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. That was very nice.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
And then, of course, Jordan, Jordan now I've known for a long time, and she knew absolutely nothing. When she
Hester
started.
Jessica with emails about projects that I wanted to do on properties I didn't even own or have money to put a down payment on.
No, she totally did. Like, I had to do intensive investigations on that one on Lucas Street, and you were like,
Sorry. City money I wasted. That's why I volunteered for 6 years.
but you obviously, you have a passion. And you do wear your heart on your sleeve, unlike Christine. But I mean, that is also a very important opinion and position to have as well. And, you know, you jumped in running, you learned how to be a leader, and you learned how to do it, and you did a really good job. You were very instrumental in getting that landmark through. And it would not have probably been started without you, let alone finished.
Well, it was one of the worst days of my life when I became chair, and then about 3 weeks later, the property went up for sale. So, and I knew that I wasn't off the hook. I could not get off the hook.
No. But you'll definitely be missed. But we know you have a great voice in the community with Little Village. And so please keep talking about preservation.
Absolutely, and I do, for what it's worth, I do hope to use our pages. We used to do a buildings issue. We did this, I think, 3 Augusts in a row or something like that, and we would tell the story of these historic buildings, or really any building. And I would really like to revive this as a column that goes through our reader areas in Iowa. So I'll be knocking.
Yeah. I do hope that you both stay involved in preservation. You know, we have our nonprofit. We have a commission that'll occasionally need volunteers. We'll have an awards ceremony every year you can attend. You know, all sorts of things. If you come up with an idea, see somebody doing bad, I don't care what it is, go ahead and reach out and know that we'll miss you.
Thank you.
Well, it has been, Jessica, I want to say that it truly has been one of the most fascinating experiences of my life to serve on this commission, because I've learned so much about historic architecture from you that I've just never met anybody who's able to explain a concept so well and in such an interesting way. I mean, the way you've led these meetings, or the way you've run these meetings, has been absolutely captivating and fascinating. And I tell this to everybody whenever I try to get somebody to fill a seat, that it's, you know, it's just really an enjoyable experience to learn from you. And I've absolutely loved it, and I appreciate it so much. And I'm just very glad to know you, and I thank you for all the work you've done.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, I would second that, and thanks to everyone who serves on the commission and gives their time, and yes, and I learned a lot, and I would agree, like the details, you know, and just these historic structures and the importance of preserving them, and it's obvious you have a passion for that, and that comes through in what you do every day.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And Anne, thank you for everything you've done to, you know, help advance what we want to do, and your work with us, moving along the landmark for the Polly Eyes building and everything. Yeah, it's been a joy.
3 years went by fast, kind of.
6 years went by.
Yeah, you were 6. Yeah, it's like 3 years. What?
All right. Move to adjourn?
Yep. Reynolds moves to adjourn.
Burford seconds.
Thanks, everybody.